Okay, well, let's talk about winter storage because here, unlike Melbourne, Australia, it's getting cold. So, the dangers we've got two things going on. We have the absolute dangers of storing your car in freezing conditions, where the under freezing temperatures can cause wreak havoc with your cooling system and your battery. And then there's also the neglect and the disuse atrophy that goes along with parking your car for 6 months without touching it. So I've got an article about it. I just want to hit the high points here. Considerations, you got to consider the location. You can park it in your own garage, but remember you're going to be driving your family car in and out of the garage every day, and every night when you come in, a little bit of snow and some salt or something's going to slough off it, drip on the floor. Wintertime around these parts is pretty dry. I wonder if that stuff actually melts or some of it sublimes because it's so cold. But you often end up with pools of water lying on the floor, and it makes a damper environment, cold, damp environment. It's nicer to have the car stored someplace where it's drier, if you can. Other considerations are if it's parked next to the family car and you're opening the door all the time, you're going to end up hitting the MG and putting dents in the fenders or the doors. I remember one year I had an old mattress, slung some rope around the mattress, dangled it from the rafters. So when you opened the door, you hit the mattress, and you didn't hit my 1962 Mark II Deluxe when it was stored there. So anyway, what about access? Do you have to get to the car? You don't have to get to the car. You can just store it, let it go. But that is a consideration if you think you want to go out every now and then. Don't go out every now and then and start it and let it warm up and then turn it off. That's bad for it. Sounds counterintuitive. Follow me through. When you start it up, you're going to get a whole lot of exhaust gases and a whole lot of moisture that's going to run down the tailpipe. You're not going to run it long enough. You're not going to idle it, rev it up and down long enough to get the exhaust system really hot to vaporize all that moisture. So instead, it's going to condense, fall to the bottom of the mufflers in the pipes, and rust them out from the inside out. So starting it like that is not a, a good idea. What about traffic? You're going to have kids, sleds, or maybe looking at the crowd, grandkids, sleds. You want people walking by it all the time. It is a very large semi-horizontal surface, and any horizontal surface quickly becomes a shelf, and pretty soon stuff stacked on top of the car. So it's just a consideration. We talked about humidity, talked about the temperature. The higher the temperature, the better, of course. If you can keep it away from freezing, that's better. But sometimes you can't. But you got to take that temperature into consideration, because you've got the battery and the coolant, both. Animals. What about animals? I don't mean Rover. I don't mean Tabby. I mean them pesky, them pesky mice and rats. Some people call them rats. I always hesitate to claim I've trapped a rat in my garage. I've trapped lots and lots of mice. I guess it has to do with the size. I suppose if you're a biologist, there is a difference maybe between mice and rats, but I like to think of them as mice. Nothing does greater damage to our cars than mice. Oh my gosh. They'll chew everything. There was a guy here in Grand Rapids who had restored a TA, got the thing all done, parked in his parents' garage. They plowed the field next to his house. They plowed it from farthest away to nearest the house, back and forth, back and forth. And all those poor little mice whose homes were destroyed were flocking towards this guy's house. And when he discovered the damage, the whole side of his seat, the whole great big side, I mean, where you're sitting between the seat and the tunnel was gone. It was chewed up. It was eaten by mice. They love the wiring. They love to make nests. We found nests inside the engines. That's kind of weird. Inside the air cleaners. Found nests on the MGBs next to the master cylinders. They love that area up there. It's nice and protected. We've had stuff up tailpipes. We've had dog food, cat food, something or other up tailpipes. One time we had a car come in that had been stored for make up a number, a long time, 20 years, 30 years, and we started the car up, and immediately we got this out of the tailpipe. It sounded just like a rod knock. Bang, 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 bang. And it turned out that it was shooting chunks of dog food against a trash can that we had right behind the car. It's so bizarre. But those pesky mice will do such damage. And once you get the smell in the car of the mice, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So the easiest way I found, the easiest way is to put mothballs in there. Other people use dryer sheets. There's lots of stuff you can use. But the most recent time that I purchased mothballs, which is to get rid of a groundhog underneath my front porch, they come now in these nice little packets. They come in these nice little like airy packets. We used to take the mothballs and put them in women's nylons. But I don't know. Do women wear nylons anymore? Anyway, this is not something that's easily available in the shop anymore. Now they come in these little tiny packets. You can put one under the bonnet, one inside the car, one in the trunk. When you go to get the car back out in the springtime, it smells like your grandmother's cedar trunk. Just does. I suppose there's some stuff that may not be so powerful, but boy, those mice will stay away. If you don't like that smell, lots of people say dryer sheets will do it.
John, also peppermint oil. We use
Peppermint oil,
with,
anything
yeah.
with a pungent odor. Someone, maybe it was last year, someone explained and said, mice live by their smell, and once they're overpowered and they can't smell what's going on because of something else, which is such a heavy smell, they just stay away. So peppermint oil. You said that last year, I think. I probably wrote that down last year. So thanks.
Yeah, and we put it under the bonnet, under the car, and in the car. And so far, we haven't had any problems.
And you don't have a garage. You store yours in the lean-to outside your.
Yeah, yeah,
I know it's not a lean-to.
it's a carport, but
Excuse me, carport.
and
Yeah,
that's a good thing because the wind circulates. You don't get a lot of moisture, and I did finally buy a couple of waterproof car covers, and then I put on jack stands, and over the wheels tires we put garbage bags because sun is not good for your tires.
correct. Yeah, that's hardly ever an issue when you're storing for winter. I would never think of this sun damage, but yeah, it's good for any time of the year. Yeah, thanks. So now we've got owner maintenance or owner improvements. Are you really going to get to the car? Do you have to get to the car? If you hook up a battery charger, I'm a battery tender, and you have that plugged in, then you got to be able to get to the car and so forth. You can't get yourself too boxed in there. You can make a case for taking the battery right out of the car and bringing it inside your house or putting it someplace else. There's an old mechanic's tale that if you put a storage battery, a lead acid storage battery, like 99.9% of us have in our cars, if you put that on a concrete floor, the concrete will suck the electricity out of the battery. You can't prove that on a chalkboard. You cannot make that work on a chalkboard. But if you put a battery on a concrete floor, it depresses. I don't know whether it gets so cold or what, but it really depresses the available energy that you're able to get out of that battery quickly. So storing it on a concrete floor isn't a good idea. But if you leave it in the car and it's going to be frozen, I mean it's going to be really cold, you've got to put a battery tender on it so that the battery doesn't go down, so the specific gravity doesn't get down to one. It's usually sitting around 1250, 1.250. That's a fully charged cell. It's usually sitting around there. And if you put the battery tender on there, it'll keep it there, and that won't freeze until it gets a lot colder. Okay. So, what about owner maintenance? Are you going to try to work on it? Or are you going to don't, as I said, don't go out and start it. You're going to go out and clean it sometime. I do all that before you store it. Really clean it really well. For absolutely store it with a top up. And if you got a GT, that's no problem. But if you got a soft top, store it with a top up because the tops love to shrink. The colder they get, the tighter they get, and you got to wait till July sometimes to get it hot enough to stretch that top and or tonneau out. So erect the top, and it's always nice just to vacuum the car out and just get it all nice and clean on the inside. And then put the car cover on it and walk away, and you don't have to come back as long as you've got that battery tender on it. You don't have to run the battery tender to the battery. You can run it to the fuse box. In the case of the 70 through 80 MGB, it's the bottom fuse and ground. On the earlier 62 through 69, there's a two fuse box, and it's the top fuse, but it's the brown fuse, the fuse that holds the brown and the purple wires. Same thing with on a T-type, the battery's right next to the fuse box, so you might as well hook it right to the battery. And on an MGA, the same thing is true. In this case, on the MGA, as long as the fuse box is installed correctly, it's the bottom fuse in the fuse box which is connected to the battery. Top fuse is connected to the key when it goes hot when you turn the key on. But the bottom fuse, which runs the horns, is always hot. So you can hook your battery charger up between that and ground. And I don't mean battery charger, I mean battery tender. Systems protection, the engine, store it with fresh oil. You only have to change your oil once a season. That's just before you store it. So you're not storing it with moisture or any acids in the oil. It really can eat up the bearings, something incredibly. So store it with clean oil. If you want to protect the outside of the engine and all the stuff that's going on under bonnet, take a can of WD-40 and expend the entire can on the underside. Oh, well, on everything in the bonnet area, the master cylinders and the heater box and the SU carburetors and the distributor and the alternator and everything, the hoses, everything, belts, the engine, everything, just soak it down. Now, of course, the car smells like a WD-40 factory for about a week. It takes a long time for that carrier to evaporate. Once it does, it leaves almost a sticky kind of real lightly sticky film, but it protects all the bright metal stuff. It protects all the aluminum, so you don't get that oxidation that sometimes you'll get with some kind of damp storage. Nothing to do with the ignition system. Cooling system, oh my gosh, you got to run 50/50 antifreeze. Ethylene glycol, just old-fashioned green antifreeze. Just make sure that it's in there. You can buy it. If you don't know what the freezing point is, you can always buy one. They got those cheap little bulbs with the floating balls in it, and it'll tell you that it's good to negative so many degrees. And just check it, just make sure. Now, that works in all of our cars up through 1976. But 77 and beyond, and the MGC, have a tank, an expansion tank that is separate from the radiator. So if you're checking the coolant in the expansion tank, you're really not checking it in the cooling system. Over a period of time, it's going to end up being the same, but better to check it in the system itself. On the MGC, you just got a blanking plate. Looks like a radiator cap. It's not. It's just a blanking plate. You can take that off and check it. Do that with your Austin America too. And then on the 77 through 80 MGBs, there's a filler plug right at the top of the thermostat housing. You can take that loose and put the tube down in there and squeeze your tester and get enough fluid into it to check the coolant. The fuel, we always talk about this. There's always like, you put something in the fuel tank or not. The rules used to be that you always stored it with a full tank of gasoline, so that the gasoline tank itself wouldn't rust when it got vapors in it, water vapor. And it used to be you could buy stable. And then Mike, I just talked to Mikey on Friday. Mike, who worked for me for I don't know, almost 5 years. He lives in Savannah now. And I can't remember what, it's not Stardust, Starbright, something or other, some product he used. And not Seafoam, something or other else. He just loved the stuff and always would counsel our owners to use that in their gas tank to hold the gasoline stable, hence the trade name stable, for the next year. You know that gasoline has got some very lightweight, volatile components that boil away at normal temperatures, which is why you can't buy really good gasoline anymore out of the pump, because since they can't use lead, they're using stuff that evaporates, and over a period of time, that will evaporate into your garage, out into the atmosphere. Anyone who's got weed eaters and marine engines, you know that when you're down for 6 months, you try to start it the next season. It doesn't like to start. All it needs is one little spritz, a puff of carburetor cleaner or ether. Engine will start right up, run great. You turn it off, let it get stone cold, won't start again because the gasoline doesn't have these lightweight components in it to affect the octane. But it doesn't seem to be a real problem. I don't know, argue one way or the other, but it is a consideration. The suspension, some people, you used to hear people said, "Oh yeah, the guy puts it up on blocks." What does that exactly mean? Does that mean the suspension hangs free? That isn't good. You want the car to sit in its natural position. You don't want the suspension hanging in an unnatural position. Plus, uh, if it's on the ground, then the tires are going to end up with flat spots on the tire if it sits there for a long time. So you can make a case. Now this is going back to access. For getting out there a couple times a season and pushing the car fore aft a couple inches, put a wedge underneath the tire or something because it wants to roll back to wherever it's flat. But if you do want to put the car up in the air on jack stands, then put the jack stands way on the outside of the A-arms and underneath the rear axle so that the car is sitting much like it would be sitting, except the wheels are off the ground. Like Jim Kercheski, who worked for me in, I don't know, 1979, 1980, I don't know, for a short time out of Chicago. He called me up a couple of years ago and he goes, "I got it. I finally got it. I've got the way to keep mice out of the car." I said, "Hey, I'm all yours. Tell me." He says, "Well, you take 4 pizza pans, great big pizza pans, and you put those on the ground, and you put the jack stands in the center of the pizza pans, jack the car up, put the jack stands underneath it, and then pour used motor oil into the pizza pan. and no mouse is going to cross that used motor oil to climb up the jack stand and get into your car. No, but what do you do when you got to get rid of all that oil? Sounds like a mess to me. But that did sound like a pretty emphatic way of getting rid of the mice. Other than a perimeter, you can't use chain link or concertina wire to keep them little creatures out. But I use Victor mouse traps. I'm a real fan of snapping them, getting rid of them. Brakes, do not park the car with the handbrake on. Oh my gosh, no, please. Because sometimes the brake shoe will rust to the brake drum. And I take the wheel off, take a hammer, beat the drum for a while, and it's just fine. But what a whole lot of hassle, what a whole lot of hassle. So that's a consideration. We talked about the batteries. Talk about the body, and if you cover the car, I wouldn't use plastic. I wouldn't buy like sheets you'd put on the floor, drop cloths. Sometimes that'll adhere kind of weird to paint, and then you go to rip it off, in the springtime, and you get a section of paint that comes off with that. A nice cloth cover is really nice, and it affords you some slight protection when something in the garage, I don't know, skates, snowboard, something, a snow shovel falls down into the car. It affords you just a little bit. The interior, just nice and clean. Just have it nice and clean. I had I had a gal one time. She said, "Oh, I put some mouse traps in my car." It's like you don't want the mouse traps in your car because then when they catch the mice become one with the carpet. So no, leave the mouse traps on the outside. So anyway, it's just a reminder. Change the oil.
Uh,
At
a,
least change oil. Yes,
a plastic cover on the car will trap moisture in the car, which is really bad.
thank you. Oh
So
my
you have to
gosh,
have something that breathes.
that's why Bob and Gloria said they found some car covers, but it's the car's outside so that the air can get underneath the car. You've seen those pictures of people that have taken a great big cloth, some great big tarp and some old tarp, and put it over their car and then put logs on it so that air can't get in there. And then when they take it off a year or 5 years later, it's just rust. Yeah. Anyway, Brad, thank you very much. It's very kind. Thank you. It's got to breathe. It's got to breathe. Anybody else
Should
have any
you, should you
suggestions?
put a should you put a tarp on the floor of the garage? Keep
Yes.
moisture from leaching up out of the concrete.
Yes. I've heard people doing that. Yes. Absolutely. Yep. And that just
Yeah,
that gets rid of that undercarriage rust. I
yeah,
mean,
John.
it slows that down. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, indoor outdoor carpet underneath the car, a section maybe 6 feet wide by 15 or 16 feet long, like a indoor outdoor carpet as a condensation barrier. Is very
Okay.
effective.
It's rubber backed. That stuff is. So okay, you don't have a club meeting tonight, huh?
No, no.
Okay.
And I guess in 2 weeks.
Okay. Oh, that's our next Zoom. So okay.
Oh, I'll miss that one, I guess.
Hey, John,
Yes.
you were talking about how to place the car, jacking it up or whatever. How about the skates? They're the platforms they're kind of dished. They're not a flat surface and they're on wheels, so you can move the car around. Does that dish design protect the tires at all, or are you still going to get flat spots?
Um, the contact area might be greater, but probably not. You got those intersecting arcs.
Yeah.
So, but those when we bought them for the shop, they were called Gojacks after Telly Savalas, right? Yeah, after Kojak. Anyway, Gojacks, and a little thing you could step on, and it would lift the car up. Those are so handy for putting your car in the rear of your garage or pushing them back, something like that. So better to have it roll, but everything's a balance. You just got to figure out what you want to do. So if it's a couple of months, it isn't. If it ends up being 2 years, well, then maybe there's a consideration.
But just for winter, it's really not an issue.
I wouldn't think so. I would use them if
All
I
right.
had to. Yep.
Thank
So
you.
you-
Thank you.
So you mentioned battery tenders a couple of times.
Yes.
So I put a tender, I took the battery out, I put a tender on it, and 2 months later, the battery blew up. The whole top of it blew up. You got any thoughts about that?
There are better tenders and worse tenders, and you apparently got a worst one. Yep, that's creepy. I mean, when you've got the battery charger, I mean, call it what you want, but it's a battery charger that's hooked up to your battery all the time. If it's very slowly trickling electricity in, you're producing hydrogen gas. And if you get a spark for some reason, it's Lakehurst, New Jersey, all over again. And it's I've had a battery blow up on me. Creepy. It wasn't, it could have been the battery, but more likely than not, it was the battery tender that was faulty. What'd you pay for it? Do you remember at all? Do you remember what you paid for the battery tender?
He's muted.
He's muted, John.
Okay, you can unmute yourself. And anyway, there are less expensive ones and more expensive ones. I don't, I think the prices come in, the normal kind of prices that you might find at Napa would be 40, 50 bucks. I think, I haven't bought one for a while. So,
Okay. Yeah, this was cheaper than that.
but yes, yeah, I think that's probably what happened. I really don't know. I don't know how, I mean, I got the concept of how those work, but I don't know how often they monitor the battery voltage. A 12-volt battery, of course, has got 13.2 volts, right? That's why they call it a 12-volt battery. So go figure. And so it monitors it and it says 13.2. And if it's not, it gives it a little shot of electricity. And if it is 13.2, it doesn't. Does it check it 60 times a second? Does it test it 60 times a minute, 60 times an hour? I have no idea how frequently it is, but it's just enough to just give it a little burst, but they fail. Not as bad as Bill Rothwell, though, who took his battery charger. I know I've told this story before. It's not a winter storage story at all, but he had a Sprite. He painted it in Imron back in the day when Imron was like, oh my gosh, they paint airplanes with this, so it's obviously got to be great. And he had a black Sprite, beautiful, beautiful car. Everything was so beautiful on it. And he got down to the point where he just couldn't get it done. He brought it in the shop and we finished it up. And I said, Bill, your battery is just scrap. I said, it won't start. We have to jump it to get it started. You need a new battery. He says, if I spend another penny on this car, my wife will divorce me. He must have, because last time I saw him, he wasn't with that same wife. Anyway, he put this old junk battery in there, and he told me later after the incident. He said, "Well, I was going to go out and drive it, and so I hooked up the battery charger, and then he had adult ADD, wandered away, and found it a couple of days later, and it boiled out all the electrolyte out of the battery, and all that acidic moisture had landed on everything underneath the bonnet in this car, which was so beautiful before, was just ruined. All the brake lines, the carburetors, anything that was exposed was all, it looked absolutely horrible. But he was successful. He owned his own insurance company. So he was self-insured. So there was no problem getting it all fixed. But oh my gosh, what a hassle. So anyway, about battery chargers, it seems creepy to leave those things hooked up. But I think the better chargers, maybe I always default to Napa because that's up the street from me.
John,
Yeah,
going back to storage facilities, I had a red midget for a while, and I stored it in a garage that had a gravel floor. And I stored it over winter, and that was a big mistake because every every brake shoe adhered itself to the drum because all of the moisture that came up out of that gravel floor. It was obviously an unheated garage. So, the idea of putting some kind of a vapor barrier under the car if you've got a gravel floor.
Even concrete, concrete sweats too. So we had a place that we used to store cars when we were out in Ada, and the guy had, I don't know what the original function of the barns were, but he said they put down foam, if it was sort of a foam base, and to put concrete on top of it or something like that. And it was a little insulated from the ground, and there were some vapor barriers, and that was high and dry. That was the point, But anyway, thanks for that comment. It's so frustrating to have those brake shoes get right, and the clutch will rust also.
John, what about if your garage is unheated? Is there anything extra you should do?
Well, again, it's the moisture. It's the moisture, and then you got to decide, do you want to put a battery tender on it and take that chance of a fire or your battery blowing up, or do you want to take your battery out and store it someplace else where maybe it's a little warmer? It depends on whether the other person in your house wants a storage battery in the basement or something, but maybe you can hide it.
What temperature should be minimum if you can put a heater in there?
I don't know. Freezing, I guess. If you can keep it at above freezing, and that's going to keep it really dry. Where are you located? What state?
I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, I don't. It doesn't get that cold there, does it? You get
It gets in the teens at times.
okay. All right. Okay. I'm not sure I'd spend the money for heat. I think you'll be all right, but use the vapor barrier. And I think Marty, do we got winter storage up on the website, don't we?
I posted the link on it.
Oh, okay. All right. So you can go in the chat section or you can go on the website sometime and find winter storage. And it's got just a lot more verbiage. Well, I don't know. I've talked a long time about this. My gosh.
Hey, John, this is John Mine in California.
Yes, sir.
I have a very easy solution to connect your trickle charger, your, what do you call it? Tender charger?
Battery tender, yeah.
Battery tender. Put a cigarette lighter plug on the end and plug it in the cigarette lighter plug.
Sure. That will work. Absolutely. That'll work great.
Like the new cars that disconnect it when you turn the key off, it's always on.
Yes. Okay. And some of them come with that. With that fitting on the end. So yeah, that's very nice. Thanks.
John, there's also a dehumidifier product usually used for boats called dry-z-air, and it's a desiccant. I don't know if I pronounced that right. $10 each. 3 or 4 of them would keep the car relatively dry.
Do you pull those out partway through the season and throw them in the oven, or?
I'm not sure about
the desiccant.
Yeah.
Those things will absorb a certain amount of moisture,
Yeah,
and then
it's like a silica.
Yeah, then they're silicon gel. Then there they sit.
Well, they're
Hey John, those things actually they drain out and they drain in this little bucket thing.
Really?
Yeah, you periodically
Yeah, they're
the dry
an
I used to
ounce.
sell them all the time for boats. So it drains in a little bucket, catch bucket, and you empty that out, and then you have to refill them with more crystals. There's also another thing for boats, which is just this. You plug it in, and this creates just a little bit of warmth and a fan, and it keeps that warmer air circulating around.
Okay.
That's a real good way to go that I've used on my boats for years and years.
Thank you.
Well, if you put a one of those computer fans on the battery and a tender attached to it, it'll circulate air and won't drain the battery anyway. So
That sounds cool. That sounds really cool.
no, a little tiny one even.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, little 12 volt. Yep.
John, when
Hey, John.
I worked for the phone company, they had desiccant in cans when I was a splicer. And one of the guys at our garage, he restored cars, rebuilt cars, and he would take a can and spread it underneath his cars in the garage. And he said, you get that surface rust no matter what you do. He said all of his cars were showroom quality because he put that desiccant underneath. So it really does work. I don't know where you can get cans of desiccant now. He stole it from work, but
Yeah.
I don't know where you can get it.
Borrowed.
Yeah, that's it. He borrowed it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're right down to 8 o'clock. We chewed up a lot of time here talking about winter storage, but I'm happy to entertain any more comments or suggestions anyone has. And then we're going to go over to the chat section.
One question, John.
John?
Yes, Peter.
You mentioned spraying WD-40 on everything under the hood.
Yeah.
Is it not true? I don't know if that petroleum, including WD-40, will make rubber deteriorate.
Well, it sure makes it look nice for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
There's no, I don't know what's in WD-40. I don't know, but I know that that if you spray it on the hose clamps and on everything else, it's so nice. But I'm a firm believer in I use a lot of grease and oil no matter what I'm doing, building engines or putting suspensions together or brakes or whatever. I use a lot of grease. And I haven't noticed a premature breakdown of heater hose from using grease or oil, or from WD-40, but I've never done a scientific study with a control group. Here, we're going to have 3 MGs and we're not going to spray any WD-40 on them, and we're going to have 3 more, and we are, and put them in the same environment. I have never done that. I don't think there's anything to worry about.
Thank you.
That's my
John.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my customers worked for WD-40 company in Warminster, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And he said it was primarily fish oil as one of the biggest ingredients.
Doesn't smell like fish.
No, doesn't. I haven't had it hurt rubber in my applications, but time will tell, I guess.
Yep. Thanks.
When I worked in a central office in the phone company, we had relays.
Yeah.
And had to lubricate them. And we were told, do not use WD-40. It creeps and blocks the relays, but it doesn't do any other damage. But it actually will creep and spread out automatically. And the little relay, it didn't have much of a spark in those relays, but the WD-40 crawled over there and stopped it.
So you wouldn't take the distributor cap off and spray it on the inside of the distributor and put the cap back on, because it's going to creep and close up your points. So.
Hey, John, another tip I got from my outboard engine supplier years ago was when you get that thing in, and I run them in salt water. They said, yeah, hose it down and then get it dried off, and then spray it down with spray silicone to help protect the aluminum heads and everything on it.
Okay. You can buy silicone in a like a spray can. Yeah.
Spray silicone lubricant.
Okay. All right.
It doesn't smell nearly as bad as WD-40.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's anything to protect, to put something between all that stuff and the air and the moisture.
So I have a question though. When you spray the whole engine bay down with WD, it gets sticky? What do you clean it off in the spring, or just
no? By the springtime it isn't sticky anymore. So, we used to use it to clean an underbonnet, that was dirty. Take it to the car wash. Use a power washer on it, with a wand, and just spray
Yeah.
and get everything all nice and clean. And then when it's all nice and dry, you soak it all down with WD-40, and it'll carry all the junk down the inner fenders and drip it on the floor.
Now, John, you didn't mention the ultimate solution for winterizing.
Move to California.
Drive south till it stays warm enough where it doesn't freeze, and you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, all right. Okay.
California's full, so that's not advisable.
Okay.
Plus, it's expensive.
Full of what?
Pardon?
Full of what?
People.
It's emptying out.
Yep, too many people. We're crowded.
Yeah, my daughter just just got an apartment in South Pasadena. What'd she tell me? $3,600 a month. It's like, geez, geez. Holy
That's a bargain.
Hey, yeah, yeah. Any more questions, comments about winter storage?
Yes, John.
Yes.
So one of the things which I've done, which may be overkill, but I like to use metal dryer lint socks and slip one over the tailpipe and two over the horns on the carburetor.
Okay.
Pinch them with the wire tie that's there.
Okay. That's, those pesky creatures. I should have posted up those pictures of those air cleaners I have. They're just filled with mouse house, mouse nest. But they do. We've taken engines apart and found mouse nests inside the cylinder. How do they get past the valves only open a quarter of an inch? How do they get through there? It's like, well, that's not true. They open about 3/8 of an inch. But it's still, how's a mouse get through? Maybe they're small mice.
And once they're there, aren't they trapped by the throttle plate?
They come up they come up the exhaust.
Okay.
Come up the exhaust and then slip into the engine. And of course, as soon as if you were to try to start the engine up, it might, you'd probably dislodge all that stuff in a jiffy. But yeah, it's just, they're everywhere. But that's a real good idea about trapping them or limiting their access.
Hey, John,
Yes.
one thing about WD-40 is it does burn. I have used it to try to start my car. Just spray a little bit down the carburetor if it doesn't start, and it fires right up. So be careful of that. And just shove some steel wool up your exhaust pipe.
Okay.
But remember to take it out when you start it.
Yep.
Put a zip tie on your steering wheel so remember to take it out of your tailpipe. Well, it's like we're tying a string around your finger.
Yep, those are all really good ideas. My late wife and I drove an MGB GT every single day of the year. Hey, we're in the business. We claimed that we could do it. So I backed my car in to a parking spot that had been plowed, a lot of snow up on, behind, and I backed it in. And I came out at night, 5 o'clock at night. It's already dark, and it sort of wanted to catch maybe twice. And the car always started. Pull the choke all the way out, it always started. So I get underneath the bonnet. I got the bonnet up. Probably I'm the last guy there left. Whole shop's across the street, but here I am, and I'm spinning the engine over underneath the bonnet with the wire to the relay. It was a 73, and I noticed this. It looks like steam or gases or something exiting between the manifold and the engine. And I thought, wait a minute. So I dig around behind the car, and sure enough, I backed it into the snow. The snow had gone up the tailpipe and melted, and then caused an ice dam there. So I got a screwdriver, just kept jamming it against that plug of ice till it was open, started it up, and of course, as soon as it got warm, it blew the rest of it out. But yeah, anyway, yes.
I'm going on 5 years now of using that product from Rhino. It's just a giant Ziploc bag you drive your car into. And I have an outdoor barn full of mice, and I threw some desiccant pads in there. zip it up. 5 years now, I haven't had a mouse trouble yet.
What's that cost? What's that bag cost?
I just had it pulled up. I'm going to say under 200.
Okay.
I'll look here.
Oh, but you can find them on Amazon. What, car storage bag? They come in small, medium, and large or something, or yeah, they aren't going to list MGs probably on their what it fits. So I've seen some of those with that you plug them in. They got maybe a fan that keeps them puffed up, like those old those domes.
Yeah, that's the high dollar one. I just looked, they're $329 now.
Okay.
I think I paid about 200 5 years ago. But
Yeah,
like I
well,
said, I got a mouse infested barn, no heat, and I haven't had a mouse in 5 years.
Very cool. Very nice idea. Thank you. Thanks. Driving on, zip it up. And what do you do about the battery? Anything?
I take it out and put it in a heated
Okay.
garage.
All right. Okay. Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
John, I have another suggestion here.
Yes, sir.
It's Alan. And I just, I didn't have this experience with an MG, but years ago with a motorcycle, I had it parked in a storage shed. And in that shed, we also had an open bag of fertilizer. And some moisture got into the fertilizer and it raised hell with all the shiny surfaces on the motorcycle, particularly like the aluminum heads and stuff like that. So if you've got a bag of fertilizer sitting around your storage space, proceed accordingly.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Talking about the batteries, I had a 64 Hudson Healy Sprite, and I got it was like a loose leaf binder. It was a shop manual, and it had maintenance, and it says, take the battery out every night and take it in the house. I said, yeah, like I'm going to do that.
With lots of midgets, you can't get the bonnet up high enough to get the battery out. Because you're buying a battery, it's a little too big. But yeah, we used to have to take the bonnets off sometimes to change the batteries. Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, it is well after 8. Any more comments about winter storage? I love the bag idea. I love the covering up the exhaust and stuff too. That bag is the nuts.
And here's one little tip on the bag. Put a mouse trap in after you seal the car up, just in case there's a mouse in there. And you'll get him real quick, and then pull it back out. Because about 3 years ago, believe it or not, I was zipping that bag up, and I had about a foot left of the zipper, and this mouse comes shooting out of the bag. Right. And then I zipped it up. It's like, I ought to set a trap just in case if there's one that I've caught in there and he won't eat his way out of the bag or through my car to the bag.
Yep. Okay.
Try using glue boards.
What's that?
Use glue boards. So might help.
Yeah, that would work too. Yeah.
I don't mind trapping them. I don't mind trapping them with those glue boards. It's like, it looks like such a dreadfully painful death. I mean, it's not their fault they're mice, right? And if you're going to get them, just get them instead of I've seen they're very effective. I mean, I don't have a problem with fly paper. That's the same thing. Only that I never. Insects aren't mammals. So anyway, I get too far off the subject here.
John?
Yes, sir.
What's your advice if you're going to use the car occasionally over the winter? You said don't start the engine and run it for 5 minutes, but let's say you're going to use it every couple months or so.
Don't start it up and walk back inside the house and wait for it to warm up. Pull the choke all the way out, start it, and go out and drive it.
In other words, do a good drive. Get it good and hot.
20 minutes. Get it nice and limbered up and hot. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
My grandfather had a Cadillac, and he drove, maybe a mile to his work and back. And I don't know, he was in his 80s, and that's the only that was almost the solitary reason that he moved that car was to go to work and back. And he changed exhaust systems all the time on that thing because they'd get of course that was back in the 60s, 70s, and metal wasn't treated like it is today. but the water get it into the exhaust, it couldn't boil out, and then it'd sit there, rusted it. Yeah.
And my dad's buddy had a 65 Dodge Coronet. He had it 2 or 3 years and it had 5,000 miles on it. It's all it had. And one day he went out and started up, the whole exhaust system fell off. It rusted from the inside. You can't. The worst thing you can do with a car, I think, is not drive it.
Disuse atrophy. Yep. All right. Well, we're going to move over to the chat section here and see what we have. If I can make the chat section work. There we go. Just a minute here. I got a brand new computer. My old one, I lost, let's see, one of the hinges on the laptop broke. I finally repaired that. I was down south a couple of years ago and I got a great big clamp and some good glue. Took the screen out, clamped that thing up really tight. But prior to that, I'd fixed it another 4 or 5 times. When I fixed it one time, and that was really good. The battery was shot, and the T key didn't work. And you could hit Alt 116, I think, and that's a lowercase t. But that's too many keystrokes for the letter T. So I've got a remote keyboard, and I thought, this is just nuts. And turns out my son had just a more modern version of my computer, and that's what I'm on right here. I love it. It's great. Okay, Steve Schuback, you're much more interesting about election results. How about just a minute? How about a special election night distraction Zoom? Yeah.
Or van election results. How can what? No, sorry. I can't type for crap.
That's okay. But I know what you mean. I'm not a sports person. The whole world of sports could vaporize tomorrow and it wouldn't bother me one iota. But I know that when the archaeologists hit any place, the first thing they find is the arena. I know sports is a part of the human nature, and we've been doing sports for all these years, but I just don't care. But tomorrow night is going to be like sports to me. I'm going to turn the TV on at about 7 and I'll be glued to it till it's over. I just love watching my girlfriend says, why don't you just go to bed and wake up the next morning, and find out who won. I said, oh no, I got to watch it. It's like watching a game, it's the same thing. So I'm going to be glued to the TV tomorrow. All right. Let's see. David Basili, what's the best source of spacers for the planet gears in the MGB differential? Didn't someone tell me a couple times ago that Brown and Gammons have those? So David, are you still on?
I am, and I replaced the spacers and the thrust washers is what I meant to say. And so it worked for a short time and then it started clunking again very mildly. And I noticed that a couple of the thrust washers are made of brass and a couple the flat ones were made of like a fabric or a plastic. And I heard that some of those flat ones you can get as brass. And I was wondering, okay, where can I get those and what thickness should I get? Because I don't want to do this again.
I think you probably buy some oversized ones and fit them selectively because the the flat ones aren't, they're both not going to be 5 thousandths larger. One might be 5 and one might be 10 or something. So, but I'm sure that there was a note from one of our Zooms from before. Someone said Brown and Gammons, who was a big MG supplier in England. The late Jerry Brown and Ron Gammons started that shop together about 1972 or 73, and they sell a lot of stuff, and they do have oversized spacers. What size? Hey, just get them. Just get the oversized ones, and I don't know, make earrings out of the other ones or something.
John, when I had the rear end done by Bruce Feldman,
yes,
everything you needed from from Colorado, from Sports Car Craftsman,
Mhm.
and they had the brass, look like washers and spacers, and fiber ones, and the fiber ones were too thick. He didn't put them in, but my rear end doesn't clunk anymore, and my differential's smooth too.
Okay. So,
God, and thanks, Marty, for that reference.
oh, all right. Okay. Let's see, let's see. I just raved about my new computer, but I've got to set the mouse. I've got to set the mouse thing a little different. Can you straighten, oh wait, can you straighten a TF frame without removing the tub? From Charles to everybody. I suppose, but oh my gosh.
I think in a previous life, it got dinged in the right rear. So it's 1 inch higher in the right than on the left. I've done all the measurements on the frame. The front measurements are equal. The measurement in front of the wheel arch is equal, but the top of the wheel arch on the right is 1 inch higher than the left. And back by the bumper, the frame is 1 inch higher on the right than the left.
Okay. So when you go to an older body shop, they've got these rings in the floor. And so they put the car up on probably wood 4x4s or 8x8, 6x6s, something like that. And then use a come along and attach it and just crank it until the thing's straightened out. And that's the only way that I can imagine doing it. But you've got to have something anchored into the floor that isn't going to come out, because you can't push it up, because you can't, if you can hold, well, you don't want to push it up, you want to pull it down. Of course, you don't know which side is correct, but let's assume that what you said is correct. The right side's high.
It is, because the gas tank is tilted too. You can see the lean and in the bumper too.
Okay, all right. You take a risk of bending the body, of course. So you might, if you're going to do something as dramatic as that, maybe you don't have to take the body tub off, but take the floorboards out. Oh joy! Oh my gosh! And then there are 2, 4, 6, 8, maybe 8 bolts that hold the body tub, towards the back end to the frame. I don't know if you have to take them off the stanchions in front, but I'd loosen up the body so that once you get the frame straight, then you can maybe end up with a gap like that big between the body and the frame now. And you've got to use some washers in there and to bolt it back down again.
So this is nothing I can do myself.
That'd be pretty intense.
So what I'm thinking is an alternative. I could shim the left side, because all I really got to do is move the bumper up and the gas tank, and it'll pretty much take it's just it just looks odd. It doesn't affect the car really. I can do that at home, I guess.
Sure. Yep. So there's some long 5/16 bolts in the back, and then there's two or three along underneath the floorboards along in there that allow the body to be attached. It's still a real project.
No, I think I'm just going to shim the gas tank and maybe lift the left side bumper up.
The bumper's easy. You can loosen the whole thing up and put a jack underneath it and jack it up to wherever it's straight and reconnect it. So, okay.
All right, thanks.
Hey, you're welcome. Let's see. Here we got Cliff Essman, who's reminding us that last year his battery blew up. That's really creepy. That's really, really creepy. So, midget 1275 with 20,000 over pistons, the best ring gap. 16, 17 thousandths, because an MGB is 18 thousandths. And a 1275 midget isn't a whole lot smaller. So you don't get into trouble with too big of a ring gap, well, unless it's a 1/4 of an inch or something. And that's whoever iPad is, who's asking. But I'd say 16 or 17 thousandths, which is probably greater than what the workshop manual says. The manual might say 12 or 10, but you cannot have the ring come up and when it expands, touch itself. Why would it be different today than it was when they made the workshop manual? Because the combustion temperatures are hotter today because of the change in fuel. So that warms up the piston rings more than they used to be. And that's why you have to make sure you've got plenty of end gap on those piston rings. George, is there anywhere on an MGB where there's a hidden serial number or VIN? So 77 through 80, yes. But what, George, which Reisinger, what year and model do you have, George?
Well, I don't really know because Daryl Lutz of Daryl's Garage called me today and wanted me to ask that question.
Oh,
so I don't know what I don't know what car he's talking about.
You don't even know if it's got rubber bumpers on it.
No, I do not.
Okay, if it's got rubber bumpers, then there's a chance, and it's oh my gosh, I've seen it. It's stamped at the right behind the right front motor mount on the frame. It's stamped in there someplace. You can ask him to call me too. And there's some other ways to range it, to backtrack it. Sometimes there's a number on the engine. There's no direct correlation between engine numbers and VINs, but there are ranges. And there's also a body number or a commission number, and I can range that for him. So if he wants to call, I at least get him in the right year, that's probably what he's hunting for. So unless he's trying to come
I'm guessing he's got so many cars in the barn over there that if there's probably some with no titles that he's probably trying to get titles for, and that's just my guess.
Okay. Technical call, I guess. So, okay. Well, anyway, you can also ask him to call, and I'd be happy to talk to him too. So
okay, I will ask him to call you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Welch, Sally Welch says, "Hi, John. Is there a way I can hook up a permanent trickle charger cable to my battery and keep it somewhat hidden so it's easy to put on and off charge throughout the winter without having to keep taking off the battery cover for my BGT?" Yes. First of all, don't use the trickle charger. Are you still on? Welch. Anyway, yes. When I built my daughter's 1973 MGB GT, I hardwired a battery tender to the car, and I think I put the battery tender out in front of the radiator with and it's got a long extension cord on it, and you just put that underneath the bonnet, and when you want to charge it, you pop the bonnet or just leave the bonnet loose and leave the cord sticking out of it. And then you can plug it in. But you don't want to trickle charge the battery unless you have no hint of ADD. Because if you leave that charger on there for too long, it's going to boil the battery dry, and it's going to wipe out. It wrecks all kinds of stuff. So the battery tender is the better solution, and you can hook that directly to the fuse box by going to the positive terminal. It goes to the brown purple wires on a later model MGB 70 through 80. It's the bottom fuse. An MGB up through 69 is the top fuse, and a two fuse box. On an MGA, it's the bottom fuse. So anyway, you can go right from that fuse to ground right underneath the bonnet, and it makes it really easy. And then all you have to do is plug it in or unplug it as you wish. Lee Gilbert, 19,
Yes.
1979 MGB. Switch to an overdrive transmission. Shifting is very stiff. Why? And I can move the overdrive switch from shift knob to steering column like an older MG. So no, you can't do that on. You can't put it up on the steering column with these comments. You've got a headlight switch on the left-hand side of the column, which is difficult to get to, but you can put an overdrive switch in the column cover on the right-hand side. There's a little tiny rectangle there, and if you put another headlight switch in there, you don't have to position it so that it says lights. Turn it over and it says lights to whoever's sitting on the dashboard looking at you. You can read it that way, and then you can run your wires up inside there. But then you got to reach around the steering wheel, and it's not very handy. You're having trouble with that thumb switch?
No, I don't. I had before every overdrive. I had a nice big shift knob, and the little
Oh,
knob.
all right, okay.
Yeah. So, but if that's the case, I'll just live with it.
There's no other way I can think of to get there. Because the function, the 4.5 functions of those switches, just it isn't there on the wiper switch.
Okay, because online they show like they put them on the dash. You put the overdrive switch on the dash or somewhere else, but
Yeah, it's you want it someplace that's comfortable.
Mhm.
Just trying to think. Do you use your windshield washers?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, because you could disconnect that circuit and put a rolling relay. I don't know. Bob Cook probably knows what I mean, but it's connected and you hit it and it's disconnected and you hit it again and it's connected and you hit it again,
Okay.
disconnected. So you could do that by pushing on the outside of the switch, but then you're going to disable your wipers. So
Mhm.
I don't know of any other place. We used to put them on the right hand side there on the column covers, and you just got to reach up around behind and do it. It just isn't as handy as either the two other ways.
Okay.
But the stiff shifting. So can you get it into reverse without grinding?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was thinking, looking online, and maybe I didn't do the work myself. I had a fellow that did it, and
Yeah.
maybe he didn't put the Thackeray washers under the plate that holds down the shifter.
Okay. All right.
That would cause it, right? Because it
that-
wouldn't have the.
It might be. It's
Okay.
pretty easy to check and see. All you do is loosen those bolts just a little tiny bit.
The only other thing was this fella said the way to put the oil in the transmission was to put it in until it starts running out of the drain plug. But the book says to put in 7.25 pints. We can only put one up with 6 pints. Would that be causing a problem?
Well, there's imperial pints and there's U.S. pints.
There's US in both cases.
We always jack when we did it on the ground. We jacked the right hand side of the car up, put the oil into the gearbox until you were pretty sure that there was enough in there or it overflowed, and then tipped it back to normal and let it run out until it was full. Until it stopped dripping. Or
Okay.
if you're level, you just put it in until it starts coming out. That's all. So
Okay. All right. Thank you.
okay, you're welcome. Let's see. Dave, David Halliday says he uses a C-Tech MXS5 and uses the permanent battery connections. I'll leave them hanging out of the front of the battery cover and just connect it up that way. You can connect and disconnect anytime. So anyway, this is a plug that is connected right to the battery, and so you can plug it in and out of the battery right there. So certainly an alternative to taking the battery cover off every time or to going to the fuse box. And Scott Lynn also says he's got a float charger. So that's what I'm calling a battery tender. I'm sure that he puts a 12-volt lighter plug on. I think he may have said that already. So, and Phil Kalura says I can show a gadget that I came up with last year, and it connects to the number 4 fuse. So, Phil, are you still on? You want to show us the
Yeah,
gadget?
I'm here, John. You there?
Yeah.
Here's my little. This was in the MG driver. I did this last year. Here's my
Yeah.
little Harbor Freight.
Yeah. Okay.
Temperature thingy. I took a cable which I got on Amazon. It's actually, I think, for trailers.
Okay.
Anyway, what I did, this was a double-ended. Let me pull this off of here.
Sure.
I think this is showing up too well. Anyway, I'll try to make it brief. I think this is a cable they normally use for trailers. So I cut the cable in half, connected it to the charger, took the other half, ran it through the grill to the number 4 fuse.
Okay.
So this way, and I leave it on year round, by the way. So this way, when I go to use the car, here's my other plug in the car.
Yep.
I unplug it, put this little cap on it to protect it, and I never have to open the hood, the bonnet at all. And it's worked fine.
Excellent. Excellent.
Anyway, I made another comment. If anybody wants a copy of the article they put in the MG driver, I put my email in there. You guys can email me if anybody's interested.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you. So, Mr. Essman, on a rubber bumper, what do I use to condition it? Should it be shiny or flat? It's got to look consistent, and they've got to look the same front and rear. So the difficult way to do it is the is the way John Clark's doing it at my shop right now. And you start with, what'd you start with, John? Are you on tonight?
I think it was either 600 or 800, John.
Okay, I think it was coarser than that. I think you might have started with 4. But anyway, yeah. So John started with we took the bumper off the car because you can't work with them on the car. The rubber oxidizes, so it turns gray. And it's been nicked and hit and touched and bumped and all this other kind of stuff. So I gave John Clark a bucket and some sandpaper, wet dry sandpaper, and you start with something coarser and not 80 grit. That's a little too aggressive. But we might have started down around 400 or something or other, and you just start going. You get the whole bumper sanded down with 400, and then you go to 800, and then 16, and then 3,000, and then maybe 4,000. And when you get all the way up to the top, then you put something on it. Put silicone on it, Armor All, something like that. But you want to get it nice and smooth first, and get all that oxidized rubber off. That's what'll make it look nice. And whether from that point you paint it, you make it look flat or shiny is up to you. They were shinier when they were new. They weren't like patent leather shoes. They weren't that shiny, but they were pretty shiny. Okay, Paul M. I think my MGA has a leaking head gasket from the water jacket into the cylinder. Please suggest a method to check it. Okay, Paul, are you still on?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so if there is a hole through the gasket from the cylinder into the cooling system, then when you run the car, you'll get bubbles coming out of the radiator. So if you fill the neck up to the top and start it up and run it, if you get bubbles bubbling up, then you know that's the condition. It's pretty weird to have that happen, but who just had that happen? Chicago. Oh my gosh. I'm just blank right now. Anyway, he had a catastrophic catastrophic cylinder head gasket failure. No idea why, where it blew through from not from the cylinder into the cooling system, but from the cylinder into a push rod hole. So
Was it Barney?
no, 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 nope. But anyway, but that's it's very unusual to have that happen, but that's the effect of it. The reverse effect is that you start the car up and you get it nice and hot. You take the spark plugs out, and if any one of the four cylinders is steaming, either the head gasket's bad or you get a crack in the head, one or the other. So those are the two ways to tell. But why do you think this is going on? Are you using more water than more coolant than you think you should be using, Paul, or what?
Yes, the coolant's going away and I can't see a leak anywhere, where it's dripping out.
Okay, so in the neck, sometimes, you've had your car for a long time?
Yes.
Okay, and this is a change then?
Yes.
Okay, all right. If it's using coolant, then you should be getting some whitish smoke out of the back end. It's not smoke, it's steam, but it looks like smoke.
Yeah, I haven't really noticed much of that, and that's why I'm a little bit confused. I'm losing the water, but I don't know where.
Your local repair shop has a stamped pressure checker that goes onto where the thermostat goes on. But remember, your thermostat is extra deep. So when you take it there and ask them to check it, they have to use something down in the bottom of there so that you can end up pressurizing the cooling system. And you take the spark plugs out after it's hot and pressurize the cooling system to 15 pounds or so, and then just wait. And either the pressure goes down because the coolant's going somewhere. Where's it going? It's either going on the ground in the sump, which would be really weird because then your oil would look like honey. It gets whipped up, or it's steaming. So I think you can probably sort it out, but you've got to pressurize the cooling system first to find out where the leak is. It's not uncommon for the water pump to leak when the car is running and then stop leaking when the car is turned off. That's a particular fault of water pumps.
Yeah, I replaced the water pump recently. I did get a little bit of a leak there. I replaced the radiator. I had a little leak in that, but now I've got a big leak somewhere.
And then the last thing, of course, is that so you got a different radiator in there now?
Yes.
Okay. That the expansion tank, depending on where you are and how much it expands, yada yada yada. But when you fill up the neck right up to the top, that's what most people do, and start driving it, the level of the water will fall, and then stabilize. So you might look into the filler neck and go, "Where's the water?" But there's plenty of coolant in there. There is, because when it starts up, it expands. So have you had any problem with overheating on the road? Have you experienced that yet?
Yes, yeah, it overheated. I had to put in, I don't know, half a gallon or something.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's going somewhere. Yeah, I agree with you. It's probably the head gasket. So, but that's a big project. So pressurize the system first. So you can. I just bought a pressure checker on Amazon. I think it was a used one. No, maybe on eBay. There's a Stant. It's a real good name, and you can pump. I don't know. I paid $40 for it or something or other, and that isn't very much compared to taking that cylinder head off. If you have to do it, you have to do it. But you can also check your radiator caps with this tool too.
Okie dokie, thank you.
Yeah, I wish I could give you a straighter straighter answer, but all right. So in here, Phil Kaller's got the link here, or he's got his email address. So if you want to know how he hooked up his charger. Oh, here we go, Eric. Keep in mind that mothballs are toxic to pets. Okay, all right. And there are two types of mothballs. There is your grandma's naphthalene mothballs, and there's also paradichlorobenzene. And when you smell the paradichlorobenzene, you go, I know that smell. I know that smell. It's what they make the urinal cakes out of for public restrooms. I can handle the naphthalene. That reminds me of my grandma, but I don't want to be reminded of a public urinal. So say, and then Jennifer Corso says, "Did you say not to use dryer sheets?" No, I did not say not to use them. Some people like dryer sheets because the stench to our noses isn't as great. But Bob and Gloria use peppermint oil too. So my guess is, oh, here we got one. Don't put a dryer sheet on the vinyl seat. It'll stain it. Interesting. Okay. So no dryer sheets on the seats. Okay. They'll go on the carpet. Okay. And then here's one fuel stabilizer called Stable, STABIL. So that's Steve Shupak put a link in for that. And Brad Schwartz has got a link in here for Driven Racing Oil Storage Protection. It's a big name. Probably has a $sign to go along with it. Startron. That's the one. That's the one, Mike. Oh my gosh. Mike, who worked my front counter, he just loves Startron. I can never remember that name. Anyway, Startron Star Bright gas additive. I mean, how can you go wrong with a name like that? I don't know. I don't know if that stuff is snake oil, but it doesn't seem to hurt anything. And lots of the people who have garden equipment and are down at the marina, they swear by these kinds of things. I use moving blankets from Harbor Freight, about $5 each, nicely padded. They protect the trunk, the hood, the fenders, so you can lay those across the top of. I have one of those on top of my MGA out in my garage right now because even my MGA is sometimes used for a horizontal service. How about the electronic mouse unit? So I've heard of these. You can't hear them. They're ultrasonic. You plug them in and they give some sort of like dog whistle kind of that kind of noise and keep mice away. So here we go. Doug says prior to winter storage, one could consider removing the wiper blades so the rubber doesn't dry out or become hard so they don't scratch the windshield. Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And Freddie says, thanks for the meeting, but I got to leave early. So, and Scott Lynn says that he keeps 3 cars on float chargers all the time. 2 are battery tender juniors, and 1 is a very cheap free Harbor Freight trickle charger. Been using them for 19 years. So the battery tender that, but electronic ignition, Pertronics, that was a real good name for a long time too. And that their failure rate is higher now. So maybe these things bought 19 years ago are made better. I did have an issue where the HF trickle charger output voltage shifted down over time and eventually wasn't keeping the battery properly charged up. I replaced with another HF one and I got free in a promotion and it's still working. I measured the unloaded and loaded output voltage first before using. So winter storage tips, Marty's got that in there again. Dry Z Air desiccant, Marty's got a link for that. Cliff Essman says, are you still offering to weld metal extensions to the brake masks. Oh yeah, Cliff, contact me. Yeah, I can get that sorted out for you. And what that for the brake masks, that's TDs, TFs, MGAs. The drums wear, maybe the modern shoes aren't made quite right, maybe lots of stuff's wrong, and you end up running out of adjustment even with new brake shoes. And by adding a little tiny thick, little tiny 1/8 inch wedge, you can get your brakes to adjust better. And here's a note here from Steve Shupak, again for the air dryer with fan dehumidifier. Ted Liberty, on the subject of WD's effect on rubber parts, does Vaseline affect plastic and rubber parts around the car? I like to coat chrome bumpers with Vaseline during the winter. What a great idea. You know, I've always wondered about the petroleum jelly and its effect on rubber and plastic parts and trim. I don't have an answer for that. I love the Vaseline on the bumper. And those poor little mice can't climb up it, right? They keep slipping off. So Bill Cadden says, I believe WD-40 is fish oil based. And the name comes from it being the 40th formula tried during the Second World War. Some people say 7-Up comes from that too, right? That was one of the old jokes that the guy's uncle had got all the way to 6-Up and went broke, and then the next guy that tried it got it on the 7th time. Chris, to everybody, I have a large garbage garage. I'm sorry, reading this wrong. I have a large garage, 24 by 50, and use 2 ceiling fans inside to move the air around and keep it dry. I didn't even mention that. I've got fans, you know, there's just those cheap Roscoe, something or other fans, great big window fans. You know, you buy them for $19, you know, and during the winter, when I have my car in the garage, I always have one running. It just swirls the air around and evaporates it. Oh, here, Eric says the fish oil in the WD-40 is a myth, according to WD-40. So, Pat Garrity. So, I use silicone spray, especially on the inside of the hoses, so they'll come off again. Makes sense. Detailed, oh boy, I'm having a hard time reading this. Just a minute here, I'll get there.
I meant to type detailers.
Detailers use baby oil sprayed on motors to make them shiny, but it does collect dust. Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, that was one guy's comment there about the WD-40. If it gets sticky, then what comes after that? It's like dirt. Yeah, okay. Detailers use baby oil. Okay, I got something on my screen. I don't know how to get rid of it. It covers up some of the words sometimes. John, everybody, wow, good thing she's making the big bucks. Must be you're talking about Marty, right? I don't think so.
No, it's Barbara's rent.
Okay. Ted Liberty says rats and mice get inside the smallest spaces. Google rats in New York City and their adventures. I remember seeing the pizza rat. That piece of pizza was as big as the rat. Yeah. So yeah, Pat Garrity says if California is the land of fruits and nuts, they are the great cereal bowl. Yep. Fruits and nuts and the rest are just flakes. All right. Okay. So anyway, we can get political here, but not the night before the election. What is it that I use? A car storage bag? No, I ought to get a car bag. I really ought to get one. Marty's got a note here on the stuff. Tom Aubrey had to sign off. Brad Schwartz, can anything be learned by removing the outer cover of the fuel tank sending unit? Can anything be learned by removing the outer cover of the fuel tank sending unit? So if you're going to jack your car up on the side, the MGB, take out the ARA 1501 locking ring and take that out. If you see that that's all spotted up and rusty, yes, it means that you haven't been keeping enough fuel in your tank. That is about all I can think of on that. Oh, and Marty's got a link here to Brown and Gammons. So ukmgparts.com used to be .co.uk.
John, I was referring to on an MGA.
Oh,
on the fuel sending unit, on the outside, there's a little cover with 4 screws.
yes.
If you take that off, what do you see?
There's a coil about as big around as a pencil, a little bigger around, like a fat pen, all wrapped in resistor wire, and then there are 2 blades that go up and down and wipe against the outside of it, like your old crystal radio when you built when you were a kid. That changes the resistance, but there's often gasoline in there, just because you can't keep it out because there's an axle there it leaks. But there's nothing to be learned. There's no reason to take that off.
Well, I guess the question is, if the tank is empty, you should see the fingers in one position, and if it's filled in another position.
Right. If these are the fingers, or these are the fingers, this is the float. So it's like this. Yes.
So if those fingers aren't moving, that means your float is
stuck.
Stuck. That's okay.
But,
So
but
that
comes out. That comes off real easily. You got the 6 screws there, 6 or 8. And that's a funny size. That's 5BA, I think.
Oh, you're saying just take the whole thing out of the tank.
Sure, just take it out. You can. I used to fix those all because you can't anything. Marty and I were talking about subjects, for what to have for tonight and everything. And she said, "Well, how about all the stuff you can fix rather than buying new stuff?" And I thought, boy, I gotta think about. I gotta have more prep time for that. I gotta think about it. But I always used to fix it. I fix the MGB sending units too. There's one particular fault with the MGB sending units. Actually, there are 2 faults. One is that the float is no longer a float; it's a sink, and so it's always on empty. But the other one is that there's a little tiny wire that breaks. You solder the wire up, and the thing works just great again. It's just wonderful. And you can do that to an MGA too, and you get a much better sending unit than you can when you look at the original ones. I don't know how many turns there are. 300? A lot. And you open up the new ones, and it looks like somebody was in a real hurry. And their boss told them to save on the wire. It's just hasn't got as many turns, and that's why the gauge jumps around some on the MGAs. So anyway,
thank you.
Any recommended car covers from the group? I mean, I need 2 for 2 cars and storage barn outside. Air egress. I've got a Tyvek cover, but I'd like to hear what car covers have delivered. That's interesting. Ted Liberty. That's used to be MG Mitten, right? But I think the last couple we ever bought were from Moss. I don't even know what they sell. I don't know what the car covers are, and there's always different grades of them. They go from being just a little more durable than a plastic garbage bag to great big $400, great big thick things that you could wrap yourself in a cold night and stay warm. So,
John, I believe we got ours at carcover.com. Right now there's a sale almost half price. That's what happened. I got a pop-up ad, and I don't pay attention to those, but I looked at it and I got the phone number, and it was a legitimate thing. So we got 2 for the price of 1 a couple of years ago. And the nice thing about it, and when you uncover the car in spring, it's clean. It's not covered with dust or anything. But it didn't do any damage. We're happy with it. But you go online, carcover.com, and see what.
Carcover.com. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sally Welch says, thank you. And here we got carcover.com. David Halliday, I'm not sure if you mentioned using a battery isolation switch to isolate the battery during storage. No, I didn't talk about that at all. It's usually the battery isolation switch is usually used for theft, but you can buy the little cheapy battery isolation switches. We've just got a knob, or you can buy the great big ones with a key on them that turn on and off, or you can get the exotic ones like the Healy uses that runs a wire from the distributor side of the coil all the way to the back of the car. So it kills the engine for sure when you turn it off. Anyway, the battery isolation switch is handy theft prevention, and it also keeps the alternator is always hooked, 68 through 80. The alternator is always hooked up and it's always drawing current. It doesn't draw much. You can't even measure it with an ammeter or a milliamp meter. You don't even get a reading, but it does draw some. So if you got a battery isolation switch, then you're completely disconnected from the rest of the car. Phil says, I have a radiator out of my TF. What a hassle. And I'm in the course of restoring. When I go to put it in, is there any way to check to see if it's not leaking? So yes, you gotta pressurize it somehow. We used to take a bit of inner tube. Are you still on, Phil? You're calling from New Zealand.
Yes, I am. Yep.
All right. Okay. Are you in the North Island or the South Island?
Auckland, North Island.
Oh, okay. Part of the Auckland MG Club?
I certainly am.
Good. Excellent. We used to take the radiators and take a piece of inner tube and fold it around the inlet and outlet and put a clamp around it, crank it down real tight, fill the thing with water, and then you got to pressurize it using some kind of pumper upper tool. But you sure want to do that before you put that back in. Oh my gosh. If you have to take that back out, that is such a bitch. It's so horrid. It's such a horrible job to do. So you don't want to do it twice. So
thanks.
My favorite MG movie of all time is Amy Boyer's MG's Forever about the Auckland club.
I don't think I've seen it.
I'm sure it's about the Auckland Club. If you go on Hulu, HULU, it's posted on there, and it's called MG's Forever. It's Oh my God, it's just great. It's just great. Yeah, and every time I'm so into it. Every time I watch it, I get tears in my eyes. I mean, it was her. I might have been like her senior thesis or senior work in an audiovisual or movie making class. I don't know where she went to school, Wellington or Auckland or someplace. Auckland probably, because it was about her dad, Boyer, and a bunch of the people in the club there. So it's pretty old.
I'll look out for that.
Yeah. Okay. Dean Hickenlooper. Yes, it was Dean. Dean, I apologize for I just had a brain fart. That had the head gasket fail. Yeah, Dean, are you still on? No, Dean's not out.
Hey, John, about head gasket failure. We were.
Guess my mic isn't working.
Oh, go ahead.
Dean, is your mic working now?
I guess so. I'm having a little problems here, but I guess I can't get the video up.
Yeah, you're on there. Anyway, what did before I go back to Bob and Gloria, what did you find out? Why did your head gasket blow?
I really don't know. I was halfway back to Chicago from Oregon, and the oil started spewing out of the filler cap on top of the valve cover.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking it was the positive crankcase ventilation system was clogged. So I cleaned it all out and everything was free and clear. And I finally got home. I just disconnected everything and let it go to atmosphere, and it looked like a little choo-choo train. It was puffing out like crazy. So tore the engine down. Again, the catastrophic failure on the head gasket. I don't know why. But the other question was that the followers, the tappets on the bottom were all pitted really bad.
How new is the engine?
It's probably 15,000 miles on a rebuild.
Boy, it shouldn't be like that. So you know the the bad news is that that wear doesn't just happen to the followers. It usually happens to the cam too.
Yes, the cam shot.
So when you put it back together, use a lot of break-in oil, a lot of ZDDP, high zinc oil, high zinc break-in oil, and start it up. And I leave the lifters at around 30 thousandths for the break-in time. Now, one guy who was on here a couple times ago said, "Oh my God, don't do that. That's the most horrible thing you can do because of the ramp opening speed on the cam, and you're wreaking havoc with the lifters." I hadn't heard that before, and I've been doing this for a long time. So anyway, I offer that as a caveat to what I'm telling you. Anyway, open up the lifters to about 30 thousandths. Start the car up. Just stand by it. Let it run at 2,000 RPM. Just crank the carburetors and just let the thing run for 20, 30 minutes at 2,000 RPM, and then shut it off and torque the head and adjust the valves, and that's as much as you can do.
Yeah, the other question, so I might have not have done a proper break-in on that motor because that was maybe 10 years ago, one of my first rebuilds. The other question was on crankshafts. Earlier 5 main 1800 motors versus later, I noticed that the counterbalance is a different configuration, different shape. And the pulleys are different on the late model MGBs. The diameter of the pulley is bigger than the earlier ones.
So, is there a relationship with the count? I've always thought, and this is where I get jammed up, that the counterweight is a counterweight to the rotating mass of the piston and the connecting rod. And the earlier cars have got nice square counterweights on them. Well, they're a little bit of an angle, and you go, okay, all right. Well, then throughout the course of the engine, they end up by 1980 where the pistons and the rods are real light. The pistons have only got 3 rings. They're really light. So the rods and pistons become incredibly lighter over the course of the engine production than the early cars. And yet the bells or the counterweights become greater. Is that because they were taking crankshafts off the line for the marina? And I don't know. And does the pulley have anything to do with that? I don't know. That's real interesting. I'll have next time I'm at the machine shop, I'll ask and see if that front pulley has anything to do with it. I figured the front pulley only has to do with how fast you want to drive the water pump and the alternator.
Well, it might have had part on the later ones to drive that air pump. If the pulley was driving the water pump faster, would drive the air pump faster for emissions.
It's all about emissions. It's always about emissions. Thank you. Yes, must be. Although 68, they didn't change it. They changed it in 74 and a half when they went to the different mounts.
Yes, yes. No, I was just I've got 2 or 3 cranks at the machine shop and noticed the difference. I'm guessing they're interchangeable if I keep the same rods and pistons together with them.
Well, always spend the extra $200-300 to have it balanced.
Right, right. All right, thanks, John.
Okie doke. Good luck.
I was going to talk about the blown head gasket. That
was either in Dean's case, it's either a faulty head gasket, it's a possibility, or installation error, one or the other.
So I was part way to Baltimore. In fact, I was closer to Baltimore than to Cleveland, and I had a blown head gas. It was losing water. So I said, well, if I make it to Baltimore, somebody probably has a head gasket. And that was before I start carrying one. But I went to AutoZone. I've always been a fan of Bars products, and had Bars head gasket fix. It looked like a gold color. It said use half a bottle for our size. So I did it exactly as they said, filled it up with water. Everything seemed to be fine. Got to Baltimore. I hadn't lost a drop. Drove it all the way home. Hadn't lost. Eventually, I replaced the head gasket. You can't keep doing that forever. But that stuff, if you're in a pinch, that stuff really works.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep, we're back to the cheapest, easiest, fastest. Yep. Thanks. Steve Shupak says, "What about fogging oil for winter storage?" Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the WD-40. But yes, some kind of oil over everything to keep the
But nothing for inside the cylinders and pistons. No, okay, just out. It's all.
I mean, if you're going to store it for a long time or something, yeah, sure, But it's I don't, I've never considered. I mean, you've been transferred to Johannesburg for 4 years. You got to have your car in storage. Yeah, there's another set of rules that are going to go with it, but just over the course of the winter, no, I I know what you mean by fogging oil now. Yeah. So you can take the spark plugs out and just take a can, glug, 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 put a couple of shots in there, turn the engine over by hand a couple of times, and then put the plugs back in. Unlike, we had a customer from Flint, Michigan, Ann Arbor, I don't remember, Adrian, Bob Pingree, I remember his name. And he decided he was going to tune up his TF, and he took the spark plugs out, and then something else came up, and 10 years later he brought it up to us. Of course, the engine will not turn, but I have never failed in thawing out a frozen engine. I've always been able to get them loose without taking them apart. Now that's not an engine that's been sitting in a field with the head off it. No, that's different. Okay, Tom Gunderson, I put a momentary bottom on my windshield blades for light. Oh, I got this thing in the way here. I don't know what this thing is. I can't get this. Just a minute. I'm just trying to
It's button.
What's it say?
Button.
Oh, button on my windshield blades for light mounted on the dashboard rail behind the anyway, I don't understand what Tom's trying to tell us here. But something about the windshield blades, and that's interesting. So here Steve Shupak says fish oil is what makes Rust-Oleum effective. Rust-Oleum is not is a live paint. They call it a live paint, and that's because it doesn't heal down, it doesn't dry down underneath. Well, it does over a long, long period of time, but it always stays sort of soft and goopy in the middle. And Eric's got some notes about fish oil, and here we go. I'm just going through the stuff right now. California Car Company sells car covers, including for MG models. And Will says couldn't get the carcover.com link to work. And Mark Williamson says, "Hi, John. I sent you an email a while ago about engine rebuilding instructions that you referred to in video 432, but I'm not sure I got the email right. Yeah, you probably did, but I just didn't. Send me another note, Mark Williamson." And
okay, John.
Yes.
This is Tom Gunderson.
Yes, sir.
What I was saying was you were talking about keeping your windshield blades in good, pristine condition and such.
Yeah.
Well, I put a little momentary button on my windshield, my windscreen blades switch. So when it's just a light mist, I just touch it once, touch it twice, and you don't have to pull the knob out and leave it out at any time. It's convenient.
It's so convenient that by 1977 they incorporated it into the wiper switch on the 77 through 80 Bs.
I mounted the button on the little rails that go from the bottom of the dash
to
the bulkhead.
Yep.
I just drilled a little small 3/8 hole or whatever it was, and put a little small button. It's pretty interesting. I'm into things like that.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right.
All right, we're down to Mark Williamson, who says thank you. And it's 9/11, so I want to thank everybody else for being here. So when's our next Zoom? Our next Zoom, I think, will be probably on the 18th. That's my plan right now. If you want to hear a subject you've never heard before, or you think everybody would be excited, send me a note. Send me a note. Marty and I struggle with trying to come up with stuff. We have light bulbs. I got all excited a couple times ago about, oh my gosh, I got to show all the different light bulbs. But it's kind of a esoteric deal, because if you haven't got a 1977 MGB, you don't need to know about the little tiny 2.2 watt screw-in bulbs that go in the switches with a little push and thread. You don't need to know about that. So anyway, but if you like to come suggest something, hey, we're all ears. We're happy to have this stuff. So go to the website and make a PayPal donation. That would be kind. And either drive your MG or store it correctly. One or the other. I've got to take my own advice. I can't drive it because the oil pressure line's off it right now. Had to borrow that off my own car for a customer car, and the left front brakes leak, so I can't drive it. So I suppose I ought to store it, but I haven't changed the oil yet this year, so I'm in a quandary. What should I do? Anyway, I want to thank everyone for being on tonight, and let's see. I got to find Doug. If Doug's still on, we'll have our competition. Although I'm about out of hats, I'm going to have a hard time. Let's see here. I got to find my view.
I have a participant count for you.
Oh yeah, what have you got?
We had 148 people at 8:05, but I have 166 unique users.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll
people in and out, but 148 at one time.
Okay. Oh, I'll take the one.
I came up with 157 at one time.
Oh,
I think we need an auditor here.
Yeah.
Did you mark down what time that was?
Yeah.
I'm not that anal. I mean, I'm not that detailed. I'm afraid. What's that? What's that you're wearing there, John? Buffalo?
It's the Buffalo Octagon Association's.
Oh.
They sponsor. It says MG97 Buffalo. Okay. Here, I'm gonna get rid of my just a second here. Blur my background, choose video, film, adjust background. I went on tonight a little later than usual, and of course I click on it, it says stand by for an update. I thought,
right.
No. I was on Zoom 3 nights ago or something. Anyway, this is the
great.
MG97 Buffalo.
Well, last time we were on, I remember you displayed your cap. I think your tweed cap. You got it Done and Company.
Yes.
And, John.
So here comes the deer. Oh, nice.
And it is made. It is from Done and Company. Great Britain. I bought this in either 1985 or I think it was 1988. I bought it on Oxford Street. I'm not sure Dunn and Company is still in business, but anyway.
No, they're gone. They're gone.
It's a bowler. It's a brown bowler. And if I ever go to a restaurant in Scottsdale, the Brown Derby, a well-known place, I'll wear this there. But anyway, it's a genuine article.
It looks a lot neater than my hat, that's for sure.
Made in Britain. So
very cool.
Yep.
John.
Yes, Alan.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
You've gotten rid of your background here, but what year was that background picture from?
I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, let me see if I can come up with it again. Choose. Here we go. Back. They've changed some stuff. I've got.
What was the
Actually,
year when you did the national show?
That's one of my favorite backgrounds.
Yeah, that's neat.
But that one, there's a lot of, that was this, one of those summer parties where it's just like gangbusters.
Yeah, I just curious about the year because I think I see my car, but I'm not sure.
I don't know if I can find this picture to send it to you. Which one? Your B or your Magnet? Or?
No, it would be the BGT, the teal blue one, which is right from where you are now. Your head is. It's about 4 cars over from your right ear. Yeah, and keep going. Oh, you almost had it.
Hey, we've got a lot of pictures, and I just spent, oh my gosh, way too much money, and I get videos from summer parties. Oh my gosh, and I just had them all transferred over to from VHS to ones and zeros.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. As a result, well, this February when I'm in Alabama. And I hope to visit the Southern Alabama British Car Club and maybe do another tech seminar there, and maybe visit the guys in what's the way in the west end of Florida? There's a MG British Car Club there.
There's one in Pensacola, I know.
Yeah, Pensacola, and then I'll do another seminar down at Glenn's MG service in St. Petersburg. But anyway.
The early 90s were the biggest parties. That's when it hit over 500 cars.
We had 1999 was 550, and then we had that again in 2004. And then there was another year that we had 550. And then 50, and I always have to say this, and another 50 in the parking lot who wouldn't pay the $25 to come on the field. But even at our summer party this year, where we had, 35 cars, there was an MG out in the parking lot. And I said, I can't get excited about this. But we used to go for those numbers. Otherwise, we would have had 600 MGs on the field. And that's not including the Triumphs and the Daimlers and the Jags and the Minis and so forth. So, yeah, big events. But that was them. So the next big one will be in I can get there. Where's the amusement park on Lake Erie?
Cedar Point.
Cedar Point. Yeah. MG 2025. So that'll be a really big show that year. I don't think it'll be as big as Indianapolis 96, which had 1,300 MGs. And Louisville was pretty good size. They had in Louisville, I think there were 800, 800. But
in Gatlinburg there were 1,600.
Okay.
Where?
Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, I was there.
It was overkill.
Yeah.
No room to park on the show field. Yep. Yeah, it was, yeah, but since all the people who attended those are us, everyone's older, I just got a picture today. I just got a picture of four MGs with four wives sitting up in them, and all the girls are smiling and stuff because their husband, it just, it's changed. It's changed. So
Yeah.
Everybody here seems to either have gray hair or no hair.
Yep. I've still got some. It doesn't show up well here, but I still have some color, color, some color. So anyway, it is time to say goodnight. It's about 9:20. So John Clark, I'll be in touch with you. And Sean English, I see you on tonight. Very nice. And Doug, thanks for counting.
You're welcome.
And thanks everybody else for being here. Who's got the MGA here? Picton, an MGA on a four post lift.
John,
Yeah.
here's a question that I got as a direct message. Saw the pictures of your tech library. Is there a museum?
Yeah. It with limited hours, but if you call me, I know a guy who will let you in. So yeah, I got a museum. I wanted to give the Zoom from there today, but it turns out it wouldn't have worked well. But maybe by the what did I say? 14 and 14th, the 18th. Maybe by the 18th we can do a Zoom from the official University Motors World Headquarters. Yeah.
Yeah, we organized it almost 2 years ago now. So it's there. We're just not there very often.
Yeah, well, I was there today for a couple hours.
Yep.
So, yep, and I'll be there some more. So, anyway, thanks everybody for being on. And if you have any questions and you want an answer right away, call me and I'll talk to you. I'd be happy to talk to you. So, all right. Well, until then, safety fast.
Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Adios.
Thanks, John. We'll catch you in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.